there is already legislation that was passed late last year and signed into law, a ban on the app on government devices, on any federal issued devices. At the same time, there's right now 150 million US users. This is beyond the federal ban, the number of federal workers. So this is a huge undertaking and a really big, audacious action to actually ban a communications platform that in just 2 years has grown from 100 million US users to 150 million users. So there is bipartisan agreement that the app is dangerous, and we can go into that, what the arguments are, from what I hear on people on the Hill and the NatSec community, and that it's a threat to US security and also our economic stability. And that's essentially all the atmospherics at play in Washington at the moment. There's policy and there's politics. And in this case, there's both involved. And the politics involved here is really looming over a lot of the action. And the politics are that there is a massive US v. China battle occurring in Washington. And TikTok is in the crosshairs of it, along with supply chain reshoring, along with lots of decisions based on like hot air balloons above the US, like all kinds that are purportedly from China. There's a lot going on that's involved with this broader battle over economic and security leadership globally between the US and China. And that's where TikTok fits in this. And in that bigger political battle, Democrats and Republicans are absolutely aligned, completely bipartisan. Where it comes down on this issue with speech and TikTok, the professor is right. There is a lot of queasy stomach Democrats who are either quiet or going along with some of this. I think that's what I'm hearing on the Hill. And there are some who are absolutely so concerned about the national security concerns involving TikTok that they, like Senator Warren, who's one of the co-sponsors of this Restrict Act bill, is willing to go forward and give the Commerce Department the authority it needs to be able to ban an app like TikTok. So that's my segue into what the actual national security concerns are. So the idea that the biggest problem right now is that TikTok, in the eyes of lawmakers and the administration, is that TikTok is owned by a company called ByteDance. ByteDance is based in China. It's based in Beijing. And ByteDance is allegedly, based on national security and intelligence reporting, very much connected to the CCP. That's the allegation. And there have been some reports about some intersection between CCP party members and ByteDance. And so that's what you hear over and over and over in this hearing. And when you hear lawmakers talking about the connections and the security threat, it's about the idea that the Chinese Communist Party can, through ByteDance, use it as a conduit to get information about American users via first stop ByteDance, second stop TikTok, then to the users, to either surveil US users or to spread propaganda, or both. So that's the big concern, using this as a massively powerful information platform to do what regimes have done for many, many decades, which is to spread information that favors their cause, right? So propaganda, et cetera, or to spy. There have been examples of censorship, for example, with the Uyghur minority population in China, where we've seen, whether it was mistaken or not, TikTok had said later that it was a mistake to take down the accounts of some people who are talking about Uyghurs. These are the kinds of like anecdotal episodes that lawmakers point to as very threatening. The other really big concern that lawmakers have is that there is a media law in China that would allow the Chinese government to basically get data if they wanted to compel Chinese companies to give them data based on whatever their concerns are. So lawmakers in the US say, okay, TikTok, you've promised that you're putting up a wall around the data of American users, but that means nothing when Chinese law essentially can force ByteDance, as long as you remain part of ByteDance, to give TikTok data no matter what. TikTok will say, you don't understand, this technical fix that we're proposing would absolutely prevent that. It would create like a metal wall that you can't do that. US lawmakers say, no, that's in theory, though, that doesn't matter because the Chinese government can demand this information. So those are the forces at play. That's the threat. It's the idea that of part of this bigger battle between the US and China for economic and security leadership, that TikTok can be used as a very powerful tool of information censorship as well as surveillance.
We'll get back to some of that on the censorship piece of all. You've absorbed this argument. And gosh, listening to you, Cecilia, you talk about the Uyghurs, I think, well, isn't that exactly what happened with Facebook in Myanmar? I mean, a lot of what you're saying just sounds like Facebook to me. In terms of spying, hello, how many Instagram ads am I going to have after this about Chinese genes or something, right? I mean, we know we're all being spied on at all times. We know that that companies use our data, if not for nefarious reasons, certainly questionable ones. And we know that there have been nefarious outcomes with Facebook. V, you've made some observations about this. I don't know if you have thoughts about broader, legislation that is specifically aimed at protecting all of our privacies on all platforms. Why you think TikTok's been isolated, but just what's your kind of, when you hear Cecilia talking about that, what's your response? I know you've mused on this before.
I think one of the things that comes to mind most front of mind is the idea that Congress doesn't think the American people are educated enough to understand national security risk. Because a lot of the times when I'm saying, show me what they're doing, show me where it's wrong, I'm one of the best communicators on the platform. If people are in danger, let me know, and I will help you let them know that they are in danger, and they can't show me anything. So this idea that hypothetically someday maybe we could get propaganda through the app does not feel like a strong enough reason enough to me to mitigate all of the other good that happens on the app. And we also aren't in China. Part of the argument during the hearing was well, the Chinese, they censor what their people see. TikTok is one of 15 different social media platforms that we have access to that we gain information on. And where I think TikTok does better than the other ones is oftentimes you're seeing a TikToker stand in front of a screenshot of an article that they just read or a bill that they just read that has the New York Times, that has the Washington Post, that has American legacy media that we've been taught to trust as the source. So I think the other thing that we know is when foreign governments have tried to insert propaganda into American media, they haven't been super great at it in a long time. The bots very come off body, and folks are having conversations and willing to cross-check that. They're more media literate, they're more government literate than we've ever been. And a lot of that is because of the education that we've done on TikTok over the last 3 years to get people interested and excited in this. I was on the offline podcast with John Favreau through Crooked Media this past weekend. It's a great episode if you want to listen to it because it has me, then it has an expert on China, and then it has Mark Warner. And we all sort of talk through why this is happening this way. And I don't know if there's such a thing as winning a podcast, but I feel like me and the China expert won because we knew what we were talking about. We knew where we were coming from. And Mark Warner is trying to legislate at something that he doesn't understand. And he's using terms like telecommunications. He's saying that he's a tech guy and then going on to say that he doesn't understand this particular platform. Within his own legislation, it says that if you were to get a VPN, as many people on TikTok have said, well, just get a VPN and you'll be able to usurp any kind of ban. It says in there, if you try to usurp a ban of any platform that the government decides to ban, you'll get a $250,000 fine and up to 20 years in jail. That's for any individual, company, or entity. And he's like, well, I didn't mean it like that. I meant companies that do that. And John was like, it says right here, individual. That would mean if I, an American, got a VPN and then continue to use TikTok after your proposed ban would go into effect as part of this Restrict Act passing, then I could be up for a $250,000 fine. And he said, that's disinformation that's being sown from China. And John was like, it's in your bill. You wrote this word. So this is where I'm at with the kind of what are the dangers? I think the dangers are an ignorant Congress that doesn't understand the platform they're trying to regulate, that is not doing a great job of communicating any kind of national security that we should be afraid of, that we should be working towards, and who within the language of their own bills is making punishments that they then won't actually stand up and support when they're called on it. So that's kind of where I'm at with Mark Warner in that piece now.
Go ahead, please.
I want to talk about both the data privacy issue and the propaganda issue. So for the data privacy issue, there is a positive slippery slope issue, like the impetus for a comprehensive data privacy law. And there is already a model in Europe regulating Google and other US tech companies. And I wonder if there's any better option other than, regulation by geography. And the second one is propaganda. There's a terrible slippery slope. Like if we ban TikTok, what about the Chinese video games? They are industry giants. And what about blocking the Chinese CGTN, the Chinese CCTV, or the Qatar's Al Jazeera? They might not be that influential than TikTok, but influence is one thing. But what should be the standard for restricting propaganda? I mean, the Chinese CGTN is doing propaganda every day, but who cares? So what?
I have to go. I want to thank you all for having me today. And I appreciate y'all. I'll let you guys answer that question. It was very nice to meet y'all.
Thank you, Vee. We'll see you back here with Tucker Carlson in the fall.
Hey, why not? Why not?
I can go ahead. So, well, two thoughts, and this also is in response to the earlier question. I do think like a comprehensive data privacy law is something that people have been arguing for and hoping for a long time. As Cecilia said, like there's lots of reasons to be very cynical about whether that's going to happen. I think the missed opportunity with TikTok is not so much this like holy grail of European style privacy regulation, although I also do want to raise a question about how effective the European style privacy regulation is, because both European and American regulators don't want to regulate to an extent that they destroy the business model of these underlying platforms. And so there's just a question about how effective it would be, but definitely Europe is doing more. I'm not hopeful about that here. I think the missed opportunity of the TikTok problem is thinking about government surveillance in particular as a separate problem. Now, there is this question about whether or not you can separate government surveillance and private surveillance, because of course there are data markets and governments are free to go to the data markets to buy data. But the thing is, a lot of the big social media platforms they conserve their data. It's their proprietary stuff. And so it's not obvious to me that the markets are fully replicable, that if you prevent governments from directly harvesting data from companies that they control, say TikTok, that's going to be, they can just go to the private. I know there's arguments you made. China can just go to the private market and get I'm not sure. That's an open question. So it is a possibility. At least I would like some conversation about whether or not there is anything you can do to protect, say, companies like TikTok against Chinese control by giving them some kind of legal recourse in the US or other companies. So that's, I guess, what I was talking about, not a comprehensive model. I think that ship is not sailing in the US. And if anything, I think the trajectory is the opposite direction. Like a lot of the new social media laws that worry about trying to give parents more control of their children requires forms, it opens up the door to eroding what privacy protections we have, because there's age verification. It looks like there's going to be de-anonymization in some contexts. I'm actually very worried about what the future. I think we're going in a different direction where there's efforts to create new kinds of control, particularly over children, and that actually could erode what very minimal protections we have had so far by the general First Amendment commitment to anonymous speech. On the propaganda, agree completely. It is a terrible slippery slope, which is why I think we should take it as a very real and serious problem. Now, again, under our constitutional law, at least as understood so far, the way that the government gets to deal with foreign propaganda is by labeling speakers who are foreign agents, which itself is controversial. I have my thoughts about the cases that deal with this, but we have FARA, which says if you are being paid for or controlled by adversary, a foreign government, to spread their message, then you still get to spread your message, but you have to register. There has to be a whole set of disclosures. That's the compromise position that the US has typically taken. We don't get the information out, but we give listeners some information about who is being paid for. That's a model that could be taken here. But again, the problem, I think, is really about domestic audiences who are not foreign agents. It's about this amorphous spread of propaganda through Chinese-owned companies like TikTok by people who are actually not Chinese propagandists or foreign agents. And that, I agree with you, is just very worrying. And I also think, to be clear, unconstitutional.
Also, who's doing the labels? Because if you're Elon Musk, you can proclaim somebody part of a government media.
Complicated question about how do you, yes.